Hi, this is Denise Mathew, and today I'm going to make these boho hoop gemstone earrings. They're a rustic style that have a lot of texture and character, but if you don't want to hammer, you don't have to. You can just use your hands to shape them instead and use a half hard wire. I'm using a 16 gauge wire. You could go from a 16 right up to a 20, but I wouldn't go any lighter than a 20 because it may be a little too flimsy. You can change out the beads. I've used a chalcedony, but you could also use a crystal or anything you prefer. So let's get started. I'm working with 5 inches of 16 gauge wire, and I'm going to wrap it around an old wire spool that I have. Now you can use whatever object you want to make your hoops on. You can, if you have a ring mandrel, that would work well, but you just have to keep in mind that whatever size your circle is going to be based on what you're using to wrap it around. This particular spool will make 1.5 inch earrings. Ideally, it's nice to have a round object that you can slide the wire off. Even though I don't have that today, I'll still make it work. Once you have a loose idea of the circle that you want to make, just want to get it off your form that you've used. And I've already made an earring, so I'm just going to keep going back to make sure that they're getting close to the same size. So I'm just going to go on one side, it doesn't really matter which, and I'm just going to make just a loop. Once the loop is made, on the other side I'm just going to do a little 90-degree angle, and that will be the ear wire part that's going to go in the ear, and it will attach into that loop to hold it into the ear. Most of this earring is made by just manipulating the wire to make it into a circle, so just continue to work it with your fingers so you get the shape you want. Since this is the second earring, I'm just going to keep checking back to make sure they're looking the same. They look about right, so now I'm going to use the flat part of the hammer to hammer out the earrings. That will wire harden them and also flatten them out and make them a little thicker. And then I'm going to flip it over and use the ball peen part of the hammer just to texturize it. As I said, you don't have to hammer if you don't want to. You can just use a half hard wire, and instead of using the hammer, you can just hand shape it into the shape you want it to be. And if you are going to hammer it, you don't want to hammer the loop or the ear wire part. You can leave those intact. So I'll just do another check to make sure that it's the same as the other earring, and if it is, I will start on the next part. If it isn't, then you just have to reshape it a little bit so they look more alike, and then you can move on to the next part. If you want, you can put it back on your form to shape it, or you can just stretch it with your hands a little bit. Now that they look about the same, I'm going to move on to the next part, adding the bead. I'm working with a 24 gauge wire. Ideally, a 24 to 26 gauge wire would be perfect. I wouldn't want to go much lighter because it might be a little bit flimsy, and heavier will just make the earring look a little too bulky. I'm just going to wrap the wire around the base of the earring once so I can stabilize it, and then I'm going to wrap my tail in. So I'm just going to take that tail and I'm going to wrap it around the wire until I have no more. Once the tail is mostly wrapped in, I'm just going to use my chain nose pliers just to push that little bit of wire against the base of the earring so nothing can poke anybody. And you can use your chain nose pliers to push the coils together so they're nice and tight. And then you're just going to keep wrapping so you have about 7 wraps. I'm using 7 wraps on each side of the stone, but you can use as many as you like, just as long as it's even on both sides. Once you have 7 wraps, then you can add your bead. I'm using a 10 millimeter by 10 millimeter chalcedony bead. So you want to slide your bead as close as you can to your wraps. You don't want a big space at all because that will show up in your wrap. So just kind of straighten it as much as you can, but just be careful because these beads can crack very easily. Once your bead is on and it's as close to the wraps as possible, you're just going to take the wire and wrap it around the base one time. And you just want to make sure that it's as close to the bead as possible. So once you've wrapped once, you can just wrap it one more time. And again, really nice and tight and close. And then you're going to start to wrap around the tip of the bead. And when you're wrapping, you're going to bring the wire to the front, wrap around to the front, and then right around to the back. It's important to keep your bead straight and flat while you're wrapping, so if you have to stop and just readjust it, just go ahead. It's better to have it in the right place than to wrap it incorrectly. I like to wrap about 3 or 4 times, but if you want to wrap more, you can. And then once you've wrapped as much as you like, then you're going to start on the other side. And again, keep everything nice and tight. When you've wrapped as much as you want around the bead and you're ready to go back on the base of the earring, all you need to do is make sure that the wire is to the front of the earring, and then you're just going to start doing wraps right by the original wraps you've already done on that side. And you're going to do as many as you need to get to 7, which is usually about 5. As soon as you have the 7 wraps, then you're just going to trim back the excess wire and tuck it against the base of the earring just like you did the other side. Now you can just compare your earrings one more time to see how they look, and if they don't look exactly the same, you can adjust them accordingly. The last thing you need to do is to finish the ear wire so it's nice and smooth and easy to wear. You can use a jewelry file, a nail file, or a wire rounder to finish the ear wire. It's your choice. The last thing you're going to do is just make sure that everything is working properly, and maybe push the ear wire a little bit beyond the loop so that it's going to have a little spring back when you're actually putting it in your ear. And that would be your completed earrings. So this completes the tutorial. I hope you liked it. If you did, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. We'll see you next time. Thanks for coming. Bye for now.